agenda that the Council of Township of North Huron accept the agenda for July 15, 2019 council meeting as presented. Do I have a mover? Paul, do I have a second? Chris, all in favor? Carries. Disclosure of pecuniary interests. Seeing none, we'll move on. Public comments. Since there's no public, we'll keep moving on. Consent agenda. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby adopt consent agendas 5.1.1 to 5.1.3, and further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receive consent items 5.1.4 to 5.1.3.4 for information. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin. Do I have a seconder? I have Rick. Is there anybody that would like to comment on anything? Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, Mr. Reeve. Yeah, it's regarding 5.1.2, but it's not in it particularly. It's more of a, when we deal with minor variances and different adjusting different bylaws and stuff, and there's a 20-day appeal process. We don't hear anything after that. Like, I would, unless I'm missing it, I would love to know whether you email it, that as soon as that 20 days is up, that that particular item was passed.
Oh, so you just want to know at the end of 20 days?
Yes.
Yeah, rather than,
Yeah.
I'm going to switch that over to Dwayne.
Yeah, we can do that. Generally speaking, we work on the basis of that there's no appeals. If there is an appeal, then we would inform council. But we can change.
Yeah,
that
I still
if
like
you
being
wish.
Informed right away, then there's no
Yeah.
guessing and whatever.
Any other questions or comments on it? Seeing none, I call a motion. All in favor to file? Carries. Going to go down to public meetings and hearings. We have none of those tonight. On reports, the clerk's department. 7.7.1. North Huron heat stress policy. Carson, I'm going to get to you to speak to that first, maybe.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this report's pretty straightforward, and basically through discussions with the Ministry of Labor, it was determined that North Huron does not have a heat stress policy. And so while adequate training and means for hydration and cooling are being provided for our outdoor workers, North Huron's existing practice does not identify specific Humidex threshold related responses or address the responsibility of monitoring the Humidex by the supervisors and department heads. So knowing this, North Huron staff found it prudent to adopt a policy and establish as well as best practices from neighboring municipalities. So as you'll see on page 3 of the policy, there's a chart that specifically outlines the responses to be taken by the township as the Humidex reaches a certain threshold. And this chart is taken directly from the Ministry of Labor and addresses the necessity in order to be compliant with the Ministry of Labor. And additionally, this policy is beneficial as it contains an educational chart on the signs, symptoms, treatment, and prevention of heat stress, and can now be used to educate and North Huron for training purposes for our outdoor workers.
I'm going to read the motion and then we'll ask for questions and comments. That the Council Township of North Huron hereby receive the report from the clerk dated July 15, 2019 regarding a North Huron heat stress policy for information purposes. And further, the council deems the signing of the bylaw adopting this policy to be a time-sensitive matter and approves an exception to section 19.1 of the procedural bylaw to allow bylaw 73-2019 to be passed at the July 15, 2019 council meeting, and further that the staff be directed to implement the policy forthwith. Do I have a mover? I have Anita and I have Rick seconding. Comments and questions? Go ahead, Trevor.
Yes, Reeve. My question is relates to implementation of this policy. So obviously we have numerous outdoor workers that are not directly related, like they don't have direct management functions during their whole work environment. So the question is, how are we implementing the fact that if the Humidex reaches a certain point on this threshold, that those employees how is it being documented that those employees have been instructed that they're to follow this policy? So my concern is you've got a worker who's cutting grass and their direct supervisor is somewhere else and not specifically outside or whatever the case may be. How is it being documented that individual has been advised that it's reached the Humidex, and how is it communicated to them, and how do we document it internally to make sure that we're following this policy, and Ministry of Labor is not going to have an issue with us having a policy and not administering the policy?
So for outdoor workers who their supervisor wouldn't be immediately present, it's the department heads are still going to speak to those workers, I guess. And make note of it. So the department head will be like, this discussion was held, and maybe Sean could speak to the logistics of how that would actually play out, as I know most of it is public works related employees.
Yes, through you, as Carson mentioned, one of the key elements for our day-to-day scheduling of work is temperature. So the lead hand for parks, and as well as the public works lead hands, are always having a look at that weather network to see what the weather is anticipated to be. And we had already had certain measures that were put in place. So in answer to the question, part of the lead hand's responsibility is to schedule according to weather. All this does is document the fact that A, that's his responsibility, and B, now there's clearly defined thresholds so that if he knows that tomorrow is going to be a high heat day, he'll monitor his the Humidex online. And when he approaches these thresholds, he'll start taking required actions. The monitoring is already part of our day-to-day scheduling.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Chris.
I just chatted a little bit earlier about it, but there was an event, and I just wonder if that person was it. He's saying it, but self-inflicted, not intentionally, of course. Or was the lead hand not present? Because, we've been townships for 100 years. Nothing has ever been done. It's common sense is always ruled, Some of us have farmed all our lives, and we bale hay, and it's 40 degrees, more than 40 Humidex. And Humidex isn't new. It's kind of stranging to me. I'm not against the thing, but because I know it's the Ministry of Labor that's maybe doing the changing, not so much us. But Humidex is not new. So many occupations just work through it, and common sense again. You take your breaks, and going to an air-conditioned environment is the last thing you want to do if you're hot, because you are not climatized. You will lose what you have received already, and it's the next point right after being acclimatized. So that didn't make sense, and I would strike that one unless it's coming from Toronto, because it's silly. You will not want to go to work again if you've been into a air-conditioned truck. But I'm just nattering away that I find it strange in 2019, all of a sudden we've got heat stress. Well, for heaven's sakes, everybody's been working on it all these years anyways, and go to the southern states, it's even worse, but they still get their work done. But yeah, we need to protect our workers, there's no doubt. And the common sense, the biggest thing I would teach them is, man, use your head. If you're hot, take it easy. No one's going to get mad at you because you're taking a break. If it takes a policy to get the word out and to make everybody feel better, so be it. But I just, As from an old guy, it just sounds strange.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? Carries. Okay, the next is 7.1.2. Before I read it again, is amendments to the committee appointing bylaw. Before I read it, Carson, would you speak to this one too, please?
Yes, so thank you, Your Worship. So this report is really twofold. First, it's to present a bylaw appointing all of the members to the North Huron Museum Committee in open session council for the public, and as set out as a requirement of the Museum Committee terms of reference that were adopted. And secondly, this report is also reflect the amendments to the committee appointment bylaw that were made through resolution of council into a bylaw for clarity purposes. So in regard to the first matter, the museum committee, staff proceeded to advertise for appointments to the committee with the application deadline closing on June 19th. During this time frame, all 5 of the organizations with representation on the committee provided the township in writing with the names and contact information of their representative. And these representatives are Doug Kivenhoven for the Wingham BIA, Bill Farnell for the former Friends of the Museum Committee, Berna Steffler for the Alice Munro Festival, David Wall for the Barn Dance Historical Society, and Dixie Lee Arbuckle for the Wingham and District Horticultural Society. Additionally, during this time frame, a total of 6 applications were received for the public positions on the committee, and applications were received from Betty Lou Cull, Brock Vauden, Joan Vandermeer, Julie Hamilton, Mary Margaret Kinsman, and Paula Mackey. And a table summarizing the qualifications, experience, and the rationale for applying for all 6 applicants was attached with the report for council's consideration at the July 2nd closed session council meeting. And this summary table was established in relation to the selection criteria that was outlined in the terms of reference. And after careful deliberation and with the terms of reference in mind, council appointed Betty Lou Cull, Brock Vauden, and Joan Vandermeer to the committee and invited all the members of the public who had applied to attend the meetings as well. As for the second part of this report, Schedule A of the committee appointment bylaw may be amended by resolution of council in order to appoint new representatives to the committee. However, when numerous resolutions are passed to amend the existing bylaw during the term of council, it's prudent to capture these amendments in a bylaw so that they're all in one place. And this makes it easier to track the amendments for staff, council, and the public in the future. And for this reason, the appointments of the Cross-Border Servicing Agreements Committee, the Water Protection Steering Committee, and the Sustainable Huron Committee should also be captured in the bylaw that is required to appoint the North Huron Museum Committee.
So the motion reads that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receive the report from the clerk dated July 15th, 2019 regarding amendments to the committee appointment bylaw for information purposes. And further, that the Schedule A to bylaw number 25-2019 be a bylaw to amend the appointed persons, including council members, to various boards, committees, and associations for the term of 2018 to 2022. Be amended by bylaw 71-2019 to reflect the appointments to the North Huron Museum Committee, the Cross-Border Services Agreement Committee, the Water Protection Steering Committee, and the Sustainable Huron Committee. Trevor's going to move. Seconder is Nita. Questions and comments? Seeing none, I call the vote. All in favor, and it passes. Thank you. Finance Committee, no report. No, Donna, sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. Recreation and Community Services, we have the Wingham Trailer Park. Vicki, I'm going to ask you to speak to that.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report before you tonight is for informational purposes. It is in response to some questions that arose during council's orientation sessions and facility tour. The report provides background information relative to the past and current operation of the trailer park, identifies concerns that were previously expressed relative to the operational costs and future capital costs of the trailer park, as well as the role the municipality plays in its operations. As indicated in the report, a variety of options regarding potential uses of the site have been previously discussed and considered on several occasions. These options have been included in this report for a future discussion. Again, this report has been prepared for informational purposes. As such, no decisions required at this time. However, council will be asked to make a decision in the near future.
Thank you. So before I read the bylaw or the motion, we will be having a conversation about this at a later date. If you just want to save your questions for a later date, I would appreciate it. Or if you need to, you can ask them now. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby received a report from the Director of Recreation and Communication Services dated July 15th, 2019 for information purposes. Do I have a mover? I have Chris and Rick seconds. Questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the vote. All in favor? Passes. Thank you. 7.3.2, request received from the Wingham Terry Fox Run Organization Committee. Vicki, again, would you mind speaking to this?
Thank you, Your Worship. On an annual basis, the Township of North Huron has hosted numerous special events and festivals. One of these events is the Terry Fox Run. This year will mark the 39th anniversary for the Terry Fox Run, but it will be Wingham's 32nd anniversary. The Wingham Terry Fox Run is organized and coordinated by volunteers from the community. The volunteers are responsible for everything from planning and promoting the event, soliciting sponsorships, and overseeing the activities planned for the day. The local organizing committee has requested the use of the picnic shelter at Lions Park as a staging area for the event, which is being held on Sunday, September the 15th. As per the Terry Fox Foundation policies and guidelines, all goods and services related to the run must be donated. For this reason, the organizers of the Wingham Terry Fox Run have requested the fees associated with the use of the picnic shelter at Lions Park be waived. This request meets the criteria set out in the township's donation and fee waiving policy, and as such, staff recommend council support this event.
So I'll read the motion that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby approves the request from the Wingham Terry Fox Run Organizing Committee and waives the rental fee for the use of the Lions Picnic Shelter in Wingham on Sunday, September 15th, 2019. Do I have a mover? I have Anita. Seconder. I have Paul. Questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the vote. All in favor? Carries. Public Works and Facilities. 7.4.1. This is the Moncrief Road Reconstruction Project. Sean, do you mind speaking to this first?
Yes, Your Worship. As council will recall, during the 2019 budget process, the decision was made to do some more hard surfacing in the road, specifically from Curry Line to Scott Line on Moncrief. So as you would expect, staff prepared or began preparing to undertake that project. Part of that would be to look at what we have there to really get a good handle on the road base. In the process of doing that, we discovered a couple of things. First off, the road is actually very thin. So there's 300 millimeters or a foot of hay gravel that's been placed basically over the native topsoil. This was done decades ago, so the road is established. The other thing that we did find is it varies in width from about 6.5 to 7.5 meters. So there's not a whole lot of standardization on the road. Of course, part of the project would be removal and replacement of culverts as well, so that prompted further investigation. Once we looked at it, our concern was that we would be taking a fairly significant amount of money and applying it to a road base that's fairly thin. It's not durable. We've had a lot of discussion over the weight of the traffic that we put over these roads nowadays, and our fear would be that we go and hard surface this, and we're not going to get 7 to 10 years of durable, usable road out of it because of the lack of foundation. So the recommendation or suggestion in front of council right now is to redirect those funds into the same block, but rebuilding the road. So what we're recommending is we keep the 300 that's there of A. We put 300, another foot of B on it, and another 6 inches of A, as well as replacing all the culverts, and we bring the whole thing to an overall width of 8 meters with a 7-meter driven surface. So the net result at the end of the season is that we have a completely rebuilt section of rural road. And then that would, if this approach is approved, then of course that prompts more discussion at the budget as to whether we look at hard surfacing it next year because it'll be ready to accept it, or do we go and start working on other sections that we find to be thin. That's a budget period discussion. Really, at this point, we're looking for direction from council as to whether this proposed course of action would be acceptable. And then the only other thing that I really wanted to point out to council was that we're approaching, if approved, we're approaching this project differently. We're not just going to put a tender out and say, somebody come and take care of our problem. We have the skill set and the resources to be the project manager for this job. So if approved, what we would be doing is putting a tender out for the best price we can get on aggregate, for the best price we can get on hauling, for the best price we can get on equipment. And we bring all of those components together and manage the overall project so that although it's not an in-house job, it's managed by us. And then the other benefit to doing this is if we don't touch it other than project management, then it is all eligible for OSIP funds.
Good. So I'm going to read the motion that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receive the report from the Director of Public Works dated July 15, 2019 regarding changes to the Moncrief Road reconstruction project for information. And further, the council authorized the funds identified in the 2019 capital budget for the Rural Road Surface Treatment Program to be applied towards the rebuilding of the road base on Moncrief Road. Do I have a mover? Rick, do I have a seconder? Paul, questions and comments? Go ahead, Chris.
Through you, Reeve, to Sean, do we have an idea what the base was like in the first section? That is chipped now.
No, through you, no, we don't.
Okay.
Just our only concern is that we don't want to apply this to the section knowing that although it is established, it's been there for a long time,
Yeah, it's decent.
but we wouldn't be able to give you every confidence that you get a decade out of this hard surfacing because we know that we've got a fairly thin bed.
Question two, if you don't mind. Would it be a good idea for us to have a bit of an inventory of the baselines of other roads?
Yes, through you, I think that's definitely something we have to look at in the future. We were surprised to see just how little base was there, which brings a number of other areas throughout the rural that we would definitely want to look at.
Anita?
To you, yeah, I was like other people there, very disappointed that we were approved for this. We're going to do this, build a hard road, and then when in July, all of a sudden we find out that the road isn't good enough to support, or the base isn't good enough to support all the hardship that's going on there. So, yeah, I agree with Chris that we have to find a way to see how the other roads or the rest of the road is, if it's all the same, or because that's what we need to know for the budget for coming years.
Right, and if I may, I have to stress that, we could definitely apply the tar and chip and have no problem. But there are areas that we found were a little soft at certain times of year. These areas, this is what really prompted us to start investigating, and that's why the recommendation's in front of you. If we're going to do this, it would be, we would have confidence going into the tar and chip, if that's being done in year two, that you've got, at this point, you'd have a solid 750 millimeter base. The road would be built up to a point where we would be very confident putting that hard surfacing down.
Yeah, if you put the tar and chip on right now, if we make that choice, will you have to still replace the culverts or the other things that will be replaced if you build the road?
Yes, through your worship, we would always do that because
Still have to do
those
that.
are all the CSP. They're the old corrugated
Okay.
steel pipe.
Mhm.
Anytime we come across that and we get them and put the plastic in, then you don't worry about it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Trev.
Just a comment that, yeah, I would agree with both of the comments from the group here about, we have to do things the right way and no shortcuts. The shortcuts are going to get us in a huge bit of trouble future down the line where we do something as simple as, yeah, we could go ahead and put this tar and chip on it. It might work for a little bit, and then it doesn't work, and then you look at yourselves like, why did we do this when we could have just waited another year, got the inventory correct, and then when you're doing this budgeting process for the next 5 or 10 years, you now know by the time you go to get that tar and chip process on, that you have a year that you can put the aggregate on, and then it's a cyclical process as opposed to this concern about knowing what we have and knowing what we don't have. So, I'm a little disappointed in the fact that we didn't know this before as well as other counselors. However, let's take the information that we know now and make lemonade with it and figure out how do we do it right for each section of road in the rural, and plan it accordingly, knowing that you want to do it, reconstruct the whole thing to make sure that you're right, because you don't want to put tar and chip down then dig it up for a culvert or whatever else problem may arise. So, I think we need to take a more simplified approach in saying, let's find the issues that we have, figure out how do we mitigate those risks and those issues, but going forward, how do we plan better to ensure that when we budget something, we know what's there and we know that this is going to happen, because right now we're not sure what I'm hearing. So that would be my comment going forward.
Kevin?
Through you, Reeve. Sean, do we know of any other stretches of road in East Lawrence that would be ready for tar and chip? That this project is just move over to another road that would have been done in that same?
Through you, Your Worship. No, and the concern would be that we want to advance a project with an end goal, so I wouldn't want to find us in a situation where we had a section of tar and chip here and then over there. The whole idea is that we would build something that would connect and flow.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Chris.
I think we mentioned, Anita, about, people were expecting the tar and chip right away, but I think that they would look at this project as we're fixing the road, they're gonna see results. And then they can look forward to the process moving on. It's a visual thing, and that counts.
Go ahead, Anita.
Yeah, I agree with you, but this is already going on for so long. It's not all of a sudden that we thought, let's put tar and chip on there. It's going on for a couple of years already. And then now that finally the decision was made to put tar and chip on there, that the road isn't good enough, the base isn't good enough. So yeah, I understand that people will be disappointed, but I agree that you have to build it from a good base and then go further from there.
All good points from the counselors. I just want to point out something as a person who travels a lot of county roads. Quite often I will see that, well, they'll chip and tar something, and then the next year they're digging it all up. This could have happened, but because of our staff taking a second look at it and being honest and coming to us and saying, we know this is going to happen, so we're going to take a little longer and we're going to do it properly so that we're not digging it up, I think is a good thing. I do understand the councilor's point of view where the public is not going to see that way, because you're absolutely right, Anita, that this has been going on a long time. But the one thing we can go and confidently say to our constituents is that our staff took a second look at this and they backed up and said, we need to do a little more expensive for our longevity. So it's so from this council's point of view, from our first year, we would have liked it done, but we're glad that our staff said, hey, just hold it a minute. This may not quite work out as well as we thought. So just want to point that out for the constituents in East Wawandosh, because I prefer to drive down chip and tar or pavement too. So having said that, I'm going to call the motion. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Fire Department. Marty, could you speak to 7.5.1 and then we'll read it out.
Thank you, Reed Valley. So I have before you my report from January to June, the incident calls and training activities of the fire department. Just did some quick calculations, and a 5-year average for the fire department for incident calls is 172. So that's their past 5 years. if it remains the same, we're on pace for 186 this year, so it's right in that ballpark. And so I just like approval to share this report with the agreement partners as
Okay,
well.
I'll read the motion then. That the Council Township of North Huron hereby accepts this activity report from the Fire Chief of North Huron for information purposes. And further, the council authorizes the Fire Chief to share this activity report and year-to-date fire department financial information to the municipalities of Morris, Turnberry, and Central Huron, and the Township of Ashfield, Colburn, Wawanosh. Do I have a mover? I have Paul and I have Anita seconding. Questions or comments? Go ahead, Kevin.
Through your review, Marty. I see the mutual aid numbers coming in from ACW and Howick. Are those just outgoing mutual aid? There's no indication here which directors we were.
They're outgoing.
Outgoing?
They're calls that we responded to so in ACW, it'd be in the area outside that we normally cover for ACW. And of course in Howick. The reason for Howick being at 3 is they had some mechanical problems with one of their trucks. So we helped them out on a few calls.
Oh, I was looking for a reciprocal aid. Mutual aid is a two-way street rather than automatic aid. I just didn't see anything on the report of how many times we've been used or they've come to help us. So it evens out, that's all.
Yeah, and Howick has, just off the top of my head, Howick's been to a couple already. Central Huron's been to some in Central Huron in our area. Those are just off the top of my head, so it goes back and forth, yes.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have those on the report.
Marty, could you maybe just send an email to Kevin?
Sure.
Actually, send it to all the councilors so that they're aware of that. I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the vote. All in favor? Carries. Next is 7.6.1, the Building Department Clean Yards Bylaw Amendment Report. Harp, your turn.
Thank you, Rebuilding. As council will remember, the new bylaw was in front of the council on June 17th, at which time you adopted that bylaw. It was brought to our attention that we wanted to reduce the gray area or misinterpretation to one sentence, being 3.55. Consulted with our solicitor, and the recommendation is in front of council. We're essentially adding only 4 words to that sentence, and those 4 words are adjacent to their property. Items A to D remain unchanged. It's only the one sentence.
Thank you. So I'm going to read the motion that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report from the building official dated July 15th, 2019 regarding an amendment to Clean Yards Bylaw 60-2019 for information purposes. And further, the council deems it necessary to adopt Bylaw 72-2019 being a bylaw to amend the Clean Yards Bylaw 60-2019. And further, that the council deems the amendment to the Clean Yards Bylaw 60-2019 to be time sensitive and grants an exception to Section 19.1 of the Township's procedural bylaw to allow Bylaw 72-2019 to be adopted at the July 15th, 2019 council meeting. Do I have a mover? Trevor, seconder is Paul. Questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the motion. All in favor? Good. Carries. 7.7 is Child Care Department. And this is concerning the Maitland River lease agreement. And Dwayne, would you speak to that one?
Sure. So we have an agreement with the Avon Maitland School Board with respect to use of space for our before and after school program up at the school. And this is a lease that we renew on an annual basis. And we review it on an annual basis because the rooms that they make available to us vary from year to year. So in advance, they notify us in terms of what rooms they can make available for us to deliver this program. There is no cost to the municipality for this, but it is But we do need to renew our lease with the school board to allow us to continue to provide that program in that space, so.
Going to read the motion then. That the Council Township of North Huron hereby receives a report from the manager of the Children's Services dated July 4th, 2019 regarding renewal of a lease agreement with the Avon-Maitland District School Board. And further, the council directs the clerk to prepare a bylaw adopting the lease agreement at the August 12th, 2019 council meeting. Do I have a mover? Paul, do I have a seconder? Rick, questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the motion. All in favor? Carries. 7.8.1 CEO Review Committee. Glenn, I'm going to get you to speak to this first, and then we're going to ask for some volunteers to sit on this before I read the motion.
Sure. Thanks, Your Worship. So in North Huron, as we should, we conduct annual performance reviews, and the CAO's performance review is due by September of this year. The CAO is the only employee of the council. The department heads report directly to the CAO when they report indirectly to council. And so essentially we're looking for an appointment or appointments to the review committee to meet prior to September. Historically, it's often consisted of the Reeve, Deputy Reeve, and one member of council, but that's entirely a council decision. It could be 3 members of council if council so chooses. So.
Okay, so do we want to go with tradition with Trevor, myself, and one other counselor, or would you like to open that up to the floor? Just put your hand up if you'd like to speak to that.
Speaking or putting name forward?
Speaking to whether you want to do 3 different ones, or the Reeve's going to be in there no matter what, because you know what I'm like. Or open it up to the floor, or the Reeve, Trevor, and one from the floor. Go ahead.
I think the Reeve, Deputy Reeve, and somebody else would be a good choice because Deputy Reeve is here for way longer.
Okay,
Reeve, so it's theirs.
go ahead, Chris.
I'd like to put my name forward.
Chris has put his name forward. Anybody else like to put their name forward? Okay, then I'm going to read the motion. Sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
Yes.
Oh, you want to put your name forward too? So if I don't mind me asking 4 do it, or 3, or just have to be 3? It has to be 3. How am I going to handle this now?
So you put a motion and for one of them, and if that motion gets denied, then you move on to the next one.
Okay. Okay. Well, since Chris put his name forward, I'll put a motion forward that Bernie, Trevor, and Chris be appointed to the committee. All in favor? Oh, sorry. I need a mover and a seconder. Anita, I was doing so good too. Seconder for the motion. Rick? Okay. All in favor? 4 carries. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to put the motion forward. No, it was, we asked if Chris, there was 4 people put their hands up.
Or did you meet for all 3? If you read for all 3, then.
No, I didn't do it at all. Oh, did I?
Yes.
Oh, I apologize. Okay, all in favor?
Sorry, it was done.
It's already carried and everything?
Yep, 4 carried.
So you made the original motion to appoint myself, you, Reeve Bailey, and Chris.
Mhm.
That was moved by Anita and seconded by Rick.
Okay,
So
And then
once
it
we've
carried.
approved
That
one,
carried.
that carried. So
Yeah.
once
Okay.
that carried, we can move on.
okay, so we're moving forward then. I'm glad. Okay, the next one is going to be 7.8.2, the lease agreement with the Blythe Festival Memorial Hall. Dwayne, would you like to speak to that?
Thanks, Reeve. So at the, in an August meeting, closed session, council received a delegation from 1419 Inc. And the Blythe Center for the Arts regarding the pending disbandment of 1419. And at that same meeting, council was informed that the Blythe Center for the Arts was interested in assuming responsibility for that lease agreement between 1419 Inc. and the township. In light of the disbandment of that organization, council would have been in a situation of having an agreement with an organization that doesn't exist. So council decided and directed staff to work with the Blythe Center for the Arts to prepare a new lease agreement for council's consideration. So at our July 2nd meeting, there was a draft lease agreement that was presented for council's consideration. The lease had been reviewed and received support from the Blythe Center for the Arts. And I'll talk a little bit about that agreement in a minute, but I think it's important for council to be aware that the agreement has been reviewed by the township's insurance provider as well as the township solicitor. Their comments have been incorporated into the lease agreement, and as well Schedule C, which speaks to users, stakeholders in the Blythe Memorial Hall. That Schedule C, and in terms of it basically ensures that the Blythe Legion and the Blythe Legion Ladies Auxiliary maintain what they had in the previous lease into this new lease, and no issues or concerns. That Schedule C was shared with the Blythe Legion and the Blythe Legion Ladies Auxiliary, and there were no issues or concerns brought forward. In terms of the highlights of the new lease agreement with the Blythe Center for the Arts, it very much mirrors the agreement that council had with 1419. There are some changes just in terms of the initial term of the lease is 10 years with a possible 5-year renewal. The tenant agrees to ensure that the building would continue to be accessible during box office hours and available to groups, organizations, and members of the community for rent. The tenant of the festival agrees to provide a directional plan and management plan by September 30th, ensuring public input into the management and use of the land and building, and indicating use of the land and building and type of access the public can reasonably expect. And I can inform council that I do have a draft plan to review. In the agreement with 1419, there was reference to capital taxes. In speaking with the Director of Finance, capital taxes no longer exists, and as such, that provision has been removed in all references to that. The Blythe Legion and Blythe Legion Ladies Auxiliary, as I've indicated, will continue to have use of the building as they have. So there's no changes there. The tenant accepts responsibility for all non-capital operational maintenance costs, similar to the arrangement that council had with 1419. The landlord, being the township, does continue to be responsible for capital improvements of the building systems. And through discussions with respect to the lease, it's recommended that council agree to complete a building condition assessment by December 31st of 2021. This is otherwise known as a capital management plan, and essentially it details, there have been recently a significant investment made in the facility with respect to improvements, and what we want to ensure is that the building remains in that state. And to that effect, basically, we'll, in terms of building condition assessment, outline in terms of when we anticipate the heating system would have to be replaced or when the roof would have to be replaced, et cetera, any of the capital components. In terms of the festival, if they propose any changes to the use of the building that results in the elimination of the building's existing tax exemption status, so the building currently does have tax exemption status, then the festival will be responsible for any realty taxes that would be owing to the municipality. And this would be a situation in which if there is space in the facility that was made available to a private enterprise that was for profit generating purposes, then the assessment on that building could change and the tax exemption status could be lost, and then there'd be realty taxes owing on it. Those taxes would be owing to the municipality. So in that, should that situation occur, it's just the agreement is clear that should that situation arise and there are taxes owing, the festival would be the party to be responsible for that. If the festival vacates the building or surrenders the premises, the festival is allowed to remove their trade and lighting fixtures owned by them. The tenant is responsible for any repair, any damages caused by the installation or the removal of any of those fixtures. A provision has been added. There was some concern raised on the part of the festival in terms of change of ownership, because the festival is governed by a board of directors and there are changes to the board of directors. So what we've done to address that is we've added a provision that basically acknowledges that changes to the members of the tenant's board of directors does not constitute a change in control of the premises, However, we are asking that the festival notify municipality by March 1st of each year as to who sits on that board by March 1st. Schedule C, which was referenced earlier, has been updated to incorporate the users of the building. So for example, the Blythe Festival Singers is a user of the building, and that was not captured in Schedule C. And Schedule D has been added basically to identify, there's been some discussion in terms of lighting fixtures, electrical components, and who owns what. So what we've done is add a Schedule D just for clarification in terms of what the festival owns versus what the municipality owns. So should the festival decide to vacate the premises, it's clear in terms of what they would take and what would stay. There are, the township does have a funding agreement with the federal government and under the agreement, it basically says that we're required to preserve and maintain the Blythe Memorial Hall for a period of 10 years. There are no plans to sell or dispose of the building. So from a staff's perspective, we're satisfied that the new lease agreement with the festival does not violate the terms of that funding agreement. There was also a signed funding agreement with the provincial government for the renovation project to the Memorial Hall. And under the terms of that agreement, the province's written consent is required to, and I'll quote, sell, lease, or otherwise dispose of any asset purchased or created with the funds or for which funds were provided, the cost of which exceed the amount as set out in Schedule B at the time of purchase. So there has been communication with the province, and the province has provided written consent allowing for the funding in that agreement to be assumed by the festival. So everything is good there. In terms of financial impacts, the agreement, there are no cost implications for the municipality in 2019, but as I've indicated, to comply with the terms of the agreement, council will need to include money or funds in the 2020 budget for the completion of a building and condition assessment for the Blythe Memorial Hall. So the agreement itself is attached to a bylaw for council's consideration on this council agenda.
So I'm going to read the lease agreement with the Blythe Festival for Memorial Hall. That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report from the CEO dated July 15, 2019 regarding a lease agreement between the Blythe Center for Arts, the festival, and the Township of North Huron for the Blythe Memorial Hall. And further, the Council adopts bylaw 74-2019 being a new lease agreement between the Township of North Huron and the Blythe Center for the Arts, the festival. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin. I have Anita seconding. Questions or comments? Seeing none, I call a vote. All in favor? Carries. Next is 8.1. There's nobody to speak to this, so I'm just going to read it out. The Alzheimer's. Yeah, actually, yes. Sure.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as you'll see in your agenda package, the township received a letter from the Alzheimer's Society of Huron County requesting permission for the township or from the township to conduct a road toll fundraiser on Highway 4 in Blythe in front of Blythe Christian Reformed Church and in Wingham in front of the Center for Employment and Learning Office on Friday, September 20th, 2019 from 3:30 to 6:30 p.m. And in the letter, it states that the purpose of this road toll is to raise awareness and funds to support those impacted by Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. And it's my understanding that this road toll was something that was conducted in the same manner in 2018 as well. And so in 2018, council authorized permission under the conditions that the Alzheimer's Society of Huron County provide the township with proof of liability insurance, and also that with the condition that the appropriate emergency services be advised of this event.
I'm going to read the bylaws or the motions rather long one. That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby approve the request from the Alzheimer's Society of Huron County to conduct a road toll fundraiser on Friday, September 20th, 2019 from 3:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. to raise awareness of and funds to support the Alzheimer's Society, with set up at 2 locations on Highway 4 in Wingham in front of the Center for Employment and Learning Office and in Blythe in front of the Blythe Christian Reformed Church. And further, that the Alzheimer's Society of Huron County provide the Township of North Huron with proof of liability insurance, and further that the county and the appropriate emergency services be advised of this event. Do I have a mover? Paul, seconder. I have Chris. Comments or questions? Go ahead, Trevor.
So the only question I have is when it says, and further the county and the appropriate emergency services be advised. Are we asking the Alzheimer's Society to advise them, or are we as the municipality advising them?
So that was the motion that was passed in 2018, and it's my understanding that it was the Alzheimer's Society who was required to advise them.
Okay, I would just make it specific that they are responsible to advise and not us.
Okay.
And the only reason I say that is a number of times where letters come in to the municipality and they're CC'd these groups, and the group believes that by them providing a CC to the municipality, they think they've done their duty, in which they have not. So I think we need to be clear that, you've provided us notice, but the county and if they're suggesting that if they provided us the notice, meaning the fire service is going to be associated to that response, then fine. I guess we just need to be clear. If they get a letter if anybody provides a municipality with a letter, and that's an internal department in us, is it our responsibility to advise those different departments within the group, or is it the group to physically contact those departments to advise them? I think we need to be clear when we get these letters at the town hall.
Yeah, if she wants to make an amendment.
I just want to make the amendment that the Alzheimer's Society is required to advise the county and the appropriate emergency services.
So the mover and the seconder agree to that? Yes. Okay. Having said that, all in favor? Carries.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
It wasn't on the motion. I was just wondering if the toll on the road has been passed by the new policing agreement. The last one would have been under the town of Wingham's policing, whether it's been blessed by the OPP that now won't run for closing a road or detaining traffic.
I'm going to throw that over to Trevor as the police representative.
So because it's a county road and because it's a municipal road, the police have no authority to deny a road toll that I'm aware of. The Wingham Police Service before never provided any issue with any road toll or not. By providing emergency services with this, the OPP would be a part of that Huron County plan, that they would have to submit one not only to the fire chief here, municipality for the fire, but they would also have to submit one to the administration of the Huron County OPP. Whether they deny it or not, they have no authority to deny it under any agreement or whatsoever. But it's a county road. County runs the road. It's in the municipality. We have to require it. So the county also has to approve it because it's on a county road as well. So that's why the county needs to be advised about the road closure, and it has to go through their proper protocols. I'm sure Reed Bailey will see this on his council agenda at some point during county.
So we're good with that? We're going to move on to the Reeves report. A few things going on. We've been reviewing the contracts with other municipalities. The staff and we have a lot of time into it. There's a lot of contracts, and we're moving along. I've met with the county employees to discuss the airports. Unfortunately, Godrey's was not in attendance, so there wasn't a lot discussed this time around. The Economic Development Committee is moving forward with ideas for future funding on vacancy buildings on the main streets of both Blythe and Wingham. There was a Blythe Memorial Hall today about the crosswalks that were happening. Hold it just a second. Just want to catch one thing before you leave.
Yeah, please.
It's actually right here.
Okay.
The Blythe Theater is putting on a Memorial Leaders play, I believe, on Thursday. Is that, if I got that right, this Thursday?
Municipal night.
Sorry, Municipal Night?
Municipal night is this Thursday.
This Thursday.
July 18th, yeah.
Yeah, And that's, so I just wasn't sure if I had that right, so. Now you may leave, my friend.
Thank you.
Yes,
Guess we'll see you Thursday night.
Yeah, so Thursday night, the municipal theater is on, and I hope everybody can make it out. I've already seen the play, and I'm gonna see it again and enjoy it again. It's quite a play. That's it for the Reeves report. Council member reports, either verbal or written updates from members who sit on boards and committees. Anyone like to speak about anything or to anything? Go ahead, Rick.
I attended a CHIP meeting last week. Our June meeting was canceled because we didn't have a quorum. But anyway, we were all gonna ask our reeves and mayors, is CHIP recognized as a committee of council, to hearing council? So that would be a question for you to ask for us.
Actually, Dwayne might be able to answer that now.
Yeah, so we've appointed an individual to that committee. So from that perspective, it's a recognized committee, but it's not our committee in terms of like, you're our liaison to that
Be the
committee.
council representative on that committee, but it's not a committee of our council.
Similar to give you a comparison, Maitland Valley Conservation Authority, it's a board. We have a representative that sits on that board that reports to council. So it's a similar arrangement, but it's not our committee.
And it's not a committee of county either then, it's a separate entity? Is that what you're saying?
I don't, to be honest, I'm not sure if it's a committee of county council. I know that it's operated through the health
I
unit.
think that was the question.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Trevor, could you follow up that?
Well, I just want to make sure we're clear, because I'm pretty sure Rick is asking,
I
the
was
committee
on,
is asking
sorry.
Yeah.
if it's a
No, it's
committee of
okay.
county council.
I'll find out for you, Rick, I'll let you know. Yep. Oh, I can write that down later. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. Comments by members. Are there any comments the members would like to make? Go ahead, Trevor.
Reed Bailey, I just wanted to mention, as part of the follow-up to your comment about municipal night on Thursday, I will be in attendance to the actual play.
Yeah.
But I won't be able to make the reception beforehand.
Okay.
I have commitments with my youngest daughter, my oldest daughter, so I have to do that. But I am planning on being at the play in due time, so I just wanted to make sure council was aware of that.
Okay, appreciate that. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on. So we have no notices of motion. Number 11.1, motion by Reed Bailey. Well, this one's come up for that the council directs staff to prepare a report regarding potential locations for the Blythe area for a Huron County Administration building. Do I have a mover? That's what you're asking for? Yep. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin. Do I have a seconder? Anita, questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries. Bylaws. I'm gonna do bylaw number 71-19. Do I have a mover? Rick and Anita seconds, all in favor? Carries. Bylaw number 72-2019. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin, seconder. Paul, all in favor? Carries. Bylaw number 23-2019. Do I have a mover? Rick and Paul, all in favor? Carries. Bylaw number 74-2019. Do I have a mover? Anita and Chris seconds, all in favor? Passes. Announcements. The next regular council meeting will be held on Monday, August 12th, 2019 at the North Huron Council Chambers. Note there is only one regular council meeting on August, although we may be having a special meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a special council meeting scheduled for Thursday, August 1st.
Okay.
If you want to get that in your calendars. And also there's a second special council meeting scheduled for Friday, September 27th.
Thank you, I thought so. Next North Huron Economic Development Committee meeting will be held on Thursday, August 8th, at the North Huron Council Chambers. The next House and Bridge Dam Committee meeting will be held on Wednesday, July 17th, here again in the chambers. Closed session and reporting out that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby proceed at 7 p.m. to an in-camera session closed to public to discuss the following. A proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local boards, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or be carried on by the on behalf of the municipality or local board. Potential residential development in Blythe. Do I have a mover? It is Chris, seconded by Paul. All in favor? Carries. Let's take a 5-minute break.